Everyone remembers the night when fear quietly entered the city. Not because someone warned him, not because he heard sirens. It came silently. He knew because the silence hiding behind normal faces, the streets felt tighter, the city felt closer. This story is about a man who looked like for the first time, fear touched him. He had a job, but it didn't stop him. He had a routine. But inside him lived he made a decision that even he had avoided for years. Something evil. He would kill years. No one noticed him. It would be different. He lived alone in a small, he didn't choose a hidden street or a forgotten place. Always calm. He chose somewhere familiar. The kind of man people describe as quiet, someone who trusted him, or harmless. The moment was quick. He paid his bills on time. Finally, greeted neighbors with a soft smile. He stood in the darkness and listened as the sun went down. His real world began. Voices. From a very young age, he felt something was wrong. Until he made the worst mistake. He showed no emotion. He used his phone. No guilt. Just once. While other kids cried, a location, a trace. While others laughed, it was watched. The police were already watching him. His parents thought he was introverted. Everything they never thought he was dangerous. Units were deployed inside his mind. No silence. Thoughts were growing. No lights. Thoughts he never spoke about. They wanted him carefully hid. By his teenage years, he discovered something terrifying about himself. But to survive, he enjoyed control. When the knock came, not power in a normal sense, but control over fear, over pain, over life. He started small, breaking things, hurting animals, watching people from a distance, memorizing routines, learning patterns. To him, humans were not people. They were experiments. Years later, when he moved to the city, he blended in perfectly. He learned how to smile when required, how to speak just enough, how to appear normal. But every night, alone in his apartment, he wrote things down. Dates, times, locations. Not plans, but fantasies. The city was growing fast. New faces every day, crowded streets, busy lives. And that made it perfect. Because no one notices when one person disappears. His first victim wasn't planned. It was spontaneous. A late night. An empty street. A moment of opportunity. Someone trusted him. And that was their final mistake. After that night, something inside him changed forever. He didn't panic. He didn't regret it. He didn't feel guilt. He felt calm. For the first time in his life, the noise in his head stopped. He realized something terrifying. This wasn't a mistake. This was who he truly was. And once he crossed that line, there was no turning back. What he didn't know yet was that this single act would begin a chain of murders that would terrorize the city for years. A pattern the police would struggle to understand. A killer who left no witnesses. And a mind so dark, even investigators would later admit they had never seen evil like this before. And this was only the beginning. After the first killing, the city kept moving. People went to work. Lights stayed on. Traffic never stopped. No one noticed that something had changed. The man returned home that night and did exactly what he always did. He washed his hands, changed his clothes, and sat quietly in the dark. There was no shaking, no panic, no fear, only silence. In that silence, he realized something disturbing. The act that should have destroyed him had instead completed him. Days passed. Nothing happened. No police knock. No questions. No news. That was when he understood how easy it was. The second kill was planned. This time he watched. He followed routines. He memorized schedules. He learned who walked alone, who talked to strangers, who trusted too easily. He chose victims who would not be missed immediately. People on the edges of society. Late-night workers. Lonely souls. When he struck again, it was cleaner. Faster. More controlled. And once again, nothing happened. No connection was made. The city whispered, but no one listened. After the third body was found, police finally paid attention. But by then, it was already too late. There was no forced entry, no witnesses, no fingerprints, just bodies, each one discovered in a different part of the city, different times, different methods. To investigators, it looked random. But to him, it was art. He began changing his approach every time. Different locations, different techniques, no patterns that could be followed. What the police didn't know was that the pattern was inside his mind. He wasn't killing out of anger. He was killing out of curiosity. How long before someone noticed? How long before fear spread? The answer came one cold morning. A woman's body was found near a public place. This time, the news exploded. Social media panicked. People locked their doors. The city finally felt it. Fear. Police formed a task force. Detectives worked day and night. Profilers were brought in. They believed the killer would escalate. They were right. Because when the fear became public, he felt proud. For the first time, the city was reacting to him. And that made him bolder. He began taking risks. staying longer at scenes, watching from a distance as police arrived, listening to news reports about himself. The killer was no longer hiding. He was hunting, and with every passing night, his need grew stronger. What no one realized was that his next move would change everything. Because this time, he would leave something behind. Something small, something invisible, something that would bring the police closer than ever before. And once that happened, the mistake was small. So small that no one noticed it at first. But it was enough. At one crime scene, hidden beneath the chaos, the killer left something behind. Not intentionally, not as a message, just a trace of himself that he never thought anyone would find. For weeks, it meant nothing. Evidence sat in plastic bags. Reports gathered dust. Investigators argued over theories that led nowhere. But one detective kept looking. He noticed something others missed. A detail that didn't belong. A pattern that wasn't obvious unless you looked beyond the crime scenes themselves. It wasn't about where the murders happened. It was about when. Every victim disappeared within the same narrow window of time. Late night. Same hours. Different locations. Same silence. The killer had a schedule. Profilers began to understand him better. He wasn't impulsive. He wasn't emotional. He was methodical. A man who planned his life around his crimes. That realization changed everything. Police began checking surveillance footage from different parts of the city during the same time frames. Thousands of hours. Endless nights. Most of it showed nothing. Until one camera did. A man. Ordinary. Unremarkable. Seen near two different locations on different nights. Too calm. Too comfortable. Once they had his image, they began building around it. Work records. Transit cards. Rental history. Slowly, a shape appeared. Meanwhile, the killer sensed something. He couldn't explain it, but the city felt different. Patrol cars were everywhere. Streets felt watched. The air felt heavier. For the first time in years, he felt pressure. The noise in his head returned. He started making mistakes. Not at the scenes, but in his routine. He changed routes too often. He stayed home too long. He watched the news obsessively. And that was his weakness. Because obsession works both ways. The more he watched the police, the more they watched him. Detectives realized something chilling. He was following the investigation, reading about himself, listening to reports, watching press conferences. He wanted to know how close they were. That need made him visible. One night, he broke his own rules. He followed a potential victim for too long, stayed too close, walked into a camera's view without realizing it. This time, there was no doubt. The same man, same face, same calm walk. The net began to tighten. But before police could move in, he did something unexpected, something reckless, something violent. Because when a predator feels cornered, it doesn't run. It attacks. And his next decision would lead to the most terrifying night the city had ever seen. By the time the police were ready to move, the killer already knew. Not because someone warned him. Not because he heard sirens. He knew because the silence had changed. The streets felt tighter. The city felt closer. Every shadow felt watched. For the first time, fear touched him. But it didn't stop him. It pushed him. That night, he made a decision that even he had avoided for years. He would kill again. And this time, it would be different. He didn't choose a hidden street or a forgotten place. He chose somewhere familiar. Somewhere safe. Someone who trusted him. The moment was quick. Violent. Final. But this time he stayed. He stood in the darkness and listened as panic spread. Sirens. Voices. Chaos. He felt powerful. Until he made the worst mistake of his life. He used his phone. Just once. A signal. A location. A trace. It was enough. The police were already watching him. That single action confirmed everything they suspected. Units were deployed silently. No sirens. No lights. They wanted him calm. They wanted him unaware. But the killer felt it. He packed a bag. Not to run, but to survive. When the knock came, it wasn't loud. It was calm. Controlled. Final. He opened the door to see faces he had imagined for years. Guns raised. Voices steady. No anger. No fear. Only authority. He didn't fight. He didn't scream. He smiled. Because in his mind, the game had ended, and he believed he had won. At the station, he said nothing. Hours passed. Detectives waited. And then, slowly, he began to talk. Not to confess, but to explain. What he said disturbed everyone in the room. He spoke of people as objects. Of fear as entertainment. Of control as purpose. He didn't see himself as evil. He saw himself as honest. But the evidence told a different story. The phone. The footage. The traces he never believed would matter. They had him. And for the first time since the killings began, the city slept knowing the nightmare was contained. But justice was not finished. Because capturing a killer is only the beginning. The hardest part was yet to come. The trial did not bring relief. It brought silence. The courtroom was full, but no one spoke above a whisper. Families of the victims sat only a few feet away from the man who had destroyed their lives. He showed no emotion, no regret, no fear, no shame. Psychologists testified for days, trying to explain a mind that felt nothing. They spoke about lack of empathy, about control, about a personality shaped without conscience. But no explanation felt enough. The killer listened carefully. Sometimes he smiled, not because he was proud, but because he believed he was misunderstood. When asked why he did it, his answer was simple. I wanted to see how far I could go. The courtroom froze. There was no tragic childhood, no moment of loss, no single reason, just choice. Evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance footage, digital trails, forensic proof, testimonies that painted a picture too clear to deny. The verdict came quickly. Guilty. On every count. As the sentence was read, the room exhaled for the first time in years. Some cried. Some stared. Some felt nothing at all. The killer was led away without resistance. No final words. No apology. Only a calm expression, as if he were finally at peace. Years later, the case is still studied. Not because of how many lives were taken, but because of how invisible the killer was. He was not a monster in appearance. He was not loud. He was not angry. He was ordinary. And that is what terrifies people the most. Because evil does not always announce itself. Sometimes it lives next door. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it waits. And by the time you realize it's there, it's already too late.